All right, we're on to Rule 13 now. Let us now descend to thoughts more practical and within the range of comprehension, and consider the 13th rule somewhat in detail. It runs as follows. Rule 13. Let the group get ready to reveal the hidden mystery. Let the group demonstrate the higher meaning of the lessons learnt, and these are 4 and yet are 1. Let the group understand the law of synthesis, of unity and fusion. Let the threefold mode of working with that which is dynamic carry the group together towards the higher 3 where the will of God holds sway. Let transfiguration follow transformation, and may transmutation disappear. Let the OM be heard right at the center of the group, proclaiming God is all. The key to the significance and the clue to the secret of this rule are to be found in the preparatory rule given to applicants in the earlier book, Initiation, Human and Solar. It is included here so that you can refer to it as you study its higher corresponding rule as given to initiates and advanced disciples. Rule 13 for applicants. 4 things the disciple must learn and comprehend before he can be shown the innermost mystery. First, the laws of that which radiates. The 5 meanings of magnetization make the second. The third is transmutation, or the secret lost of alchemy. And lastly, the first letter of the word which has been imparted, or the hidden name egoic. In this earlier rule, the disciple is told that before he can advance to the mysteries, which will be revealed to him sequentially as he advances along the path of initiation, there are 4 things which he must learn and comprehend. These are: 1. The laws of that which radiates. I would call your attention to the fact that this does not refer to the laws of radiation. That which radiates comes under its own laws, which are different to those which produced radiation. Students need to read with increasing care as they advance upon the occult way, which leads to the way of the higher evolution. 2. He must study the 5 meanings of magnetization. This refers to the 5 modes in which the law of magnetization works. This is another name for the law of attraction. 3. He must comprehend what transmutation is and in which consists the secret art now lost along with the lost word of alchemy. Esoterically speaking, transmutation is the mode whereby force is transmuted or changed into energy. This means, where a disciple is concerned, the transmutation or changing or stepping up of personality force into egoic energy. 4. He must know the hidden name egoic, or the first letter of the imparted word. 2 things should be noted here. The word here does not refer to the sacred word, but to the name of the planetary logos, the hidden name of Sanat Kumara, who is the soul of the world in all its phases, the manifesting ego of the logos on the cosmic mental plane. Only the first letter of that ineffable name is permitted expression to initiates until the 4th initiation. You will see, therefore, how vast a field this instruction on Rule 13 covers. The higher correspondences of these 4 requirements are expressed in the following terms. 1. Let the group understand the law of synthesis. This is the law which governs the thinking of those great lives who form the council of Sanat Kumara in Shambhala. 2. Let the threefold mode of working with that which is dynamic carry the group together towards the higher three where the will of God holds sway. 3. Let transfiguration follow transformation and may transmutation disappear. And 4. Let the OM be heard right at the center of the group, proclaiming God is all. You can gather from the above what a tremendous field of esoteric truth is here covered and how abstruse to the average occult student is the theme. Again, I would remind you that the real significance will only be perceived by the trained initiate, and that what I say here must necessarily be veiled and even meaningless to the non-initiate, even whilst radiantly clear to those who truly know. Again, I would remind you that I write this particular section of A Treatise on the Seven Rays entirely for initiates, and that aspirants who have not taken initiation cannot understand or duly appreciate the inner meaning of these 14 rules. In this fact lies no reason for discouragement, nor is there any suggestion that those with initiate consciousness should endeavor to explain, even if, through compassion or from the desire to stimulate approach to the mysteries, they desired to do so. No true initiate would be so tempted, for he would realize that it would not only be impossible, but also that there is a vital necessity for the disciple to work out significances and meanings through the medium of his own life experiment and to arrive at understanding through direct experience. Then no questioning can ever arise and sure knowledge takes its place. There are no questions of any kind in the consciousness of those who form the hierarchy. The lower analytical concrete mind, which questions and separates this from that, has been completely controlled and superseded. Response to indicated group activity takes place. Students need to realize more concretely that group consciousness, universal awareness, and therefore synthetic effort, synthetic understanding, and synthetic activity are possible to a master or initiate of the higher degrees. That involves the keynote of this solar system, particularly within this planet, the Earth. It will be succeeded in the next solar system by a type of life activity which is as yet only known in Shambhala. Here I should like to pause a moment and interpolate some remarks. There are certain phases of teaching and knowledge which I have given to the world which are relatively new to the modern esotericist and occult student, though not new to disciples and initiates. It might be useful here if I mentioned one or two of these new aspects of the fundamental truth which have been given by me to the public. If these new phases of the teaching have been later given to the public by other occult groups, it will have been because the information was gained by those who have read the books put out by AAB for me and who are directly and consciously in touch with my ashram. An instance of this is that book by C.W. Ledbetter on the Masters and the Path, which was published later than my book, Initiation Human and Solar. If the dates of any given teaching are compared with that given by me, it will appear to be of a later date than mine. I say this with no possible interest in any controversy among occult groups or the interested public, but as a simple statement of fact and as a protection to this particular work of the hierarchy. I would remind you that the instructions given by me, as, for instance, those in A Treatise on White Magic and A Treatise on the Seven Rays, were given sequentially over a period of years, antedating the publishing of the books. The same time factor prevailed in the publishing of the earlier books. All my books were written over a long period of years prior to publishing. all that appears of the same type of information over other signatures harks back to these books. Even if denied by their writers, a comparison of the dates of publishing with the original dates of issuing the instructions in the form of monthly sets for reading and study in the arcane school, or with the books published before the formation in 1925 of the disciples' degree of the arcane school, will prove this conclusively. Bear in mind this factor of timing. AAB takes down to my dictation an average of 7 to 12 pages of typing, single-spaced, each time she writes for me. But owing to the exigencies of my work, I cannot dictate to her every day, though I have found that she would gladly take my dictation daily if I so desired. Weeks sometimes elapse between one dictation and another. I write the above paragraphs for the protection of the hierarchical work in years to come, and not for the protection of AAB or myself. What are some of these newer truths for which I am responsible as transmitting agent to the world of occult students? Let me briefly state them in the order of their relative importance. 1. The teaching on Shambhala. Little has ever been given on this subject, only the name was known. This teaching includes A. Information as to the nature of the will aspect, B. Indications as to the underlying purposes of Sanat Kumara, and C. Directions as to the building of the Antakarana, which is the first step towards achieving monadic consciousness, and thus the first step towards the way of the higher evolution. And 2. The teaching on the new discipleship. This has been revolutionary where the older schools of occultism are concerned. The teaching includes A presentation of the new attitude of the masters to their disciples due to the rapid unfoldment of the mind principle and the growth of the principle of free will. This changed technique negates the old attitudes, such as that portrayed in the theosophical literature, and it was a recognition of the difficulties of correcting the wrong impression given, which prompted HBB in one of her communications to the esoteric section of her day to regret ever having mentioned their names. That earlier presentation was useful, but has now served its purpose. Unless the schools based on the old method changed their techniques and their approach to truth, they will disappear. B. Information as to the constitution of the hierarchy and of the various ashrams of which it is composed. I have presented the hierarchy as the ashram of Sanat Kumara in its sevenfold form, thus linking will and love. C. A presentation of the newer type of meditations with its emphasis upon visualization and the use of the creative imagination. I have presented a system of meditation which has eliminated the attention paid hitherto to personal problems and the intense earlier focus on the relation of the disciple and the master. The keynote of group fusion and of service underlies the newer form of meditation and not this powerful emphasis upon the personal relation of the master to the disciple and the achievement of the individual aspirant. This was degenerated into a form of spiritual selfishness and separateness. 3. The teaching on the 7 rays. The fact of the 7 rays was well known to the heads of the Theosophical Society, was mentioned very abstractly and vaguely in the Secret Doctrine, and formed in an elementary form some of the teaching given in the Esoteric section. The names of the rays were given, and some information as to their qualities, and the masters on their rays was imparted, but not much else. I have given out much information upon the subject and have endeavored to show the importance of this teaching from the psychological angle, because the new psychology is in the making. If esoteric teaching is eventually to be public in its presentation, it will be given out along the lines of psychology, because esoteric teaching in its fullest and deepest sense concerns the consciousness aspect of man and God. 4. The teaching on the new astrology. This teaching, too, has gone out to a few hundred students before its publication in book form. This new astrology has been hitherto ignored by those astrologers who have read it, and, with the exception of 4 astrologers who have deeply appreciated it, but who wish I would be more explicit, see little in it. I have given enough, could the open-minded astrologer but realize, to establish the coming astrology on a firm basis. The accuracy of what I have given will, in the course of time, be ascertained when astrologers who are dealing with the horoscopes of advanced people and disciples will use the esoteric planets as given by me and not the orthodox planets as usually used. The accuracy of their deductions will necessarily depend upon their own point of development and also upon their ability to recognize an advanced person, a disciple, or an initiate when they meet him and undertake to cast his horoscope. If they are themselves advanced disciples, they may have a tendency to set too rigid a standard for those seeking astrological deduction and thus fail to recognize a disciple. If they are not advanced, they may regard people as advanced who are far from being even true aspirants. In either case, then the horoscope may prove inaccurate. It is of no use to use the esoteric planets in relation to the average man. And 5, information about the new group of world servers and their work. This information includes A, the recognition of this group as intermediate between the hierarchy and humanity, B, the nature of their work as it influences the human soul and as it seeks through the instrumentality of the men and women of goodwill to determine the period in which we live, C, the triangle work which embodies 2 phases of their work, i.e., the forming of the network of light as the channel of communication between the hierarchy and humanity, and the forming simultaneously of the network of goodwill, which is the objective expression of the subjective influence of light. Ponder on this statement. 6, the attempt to form an exoteric branch of the inner ashrams. This is evidenced in the work I have done with a special group of aspirants and accepted disciples whose instructions emanating from my ashram have been embodied in the book Discipleship in the New Age, volumes 1 and 2. 7, teaching upon the New World religion with its emphasis upon the 3 major full moon periods, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, falling usually in April, May, and June respectively, and the 9, occasionally 10, minor full moons each year. This leads to a consequent relation being established between the work of the Christ and of the Buddha in the minds of spiritually inclined people everywhere, with the result of a great broadening of the human aspiration. This work is as yet embryonic, but it should receive increasing attention. Eventually, it will demonstrate as the main linking unit between the East and the West, particularly if Sri Krishna is shown to be an earlier incarnation of the Lord of Love, the Christ. Thereby, 3 major world religions, the Christian, the Hindu, and the Buddhist, will be intimately related, whilst the Mohammedan faith will be found to be linked to the Christian faith because it embodies the work of the Master Jesus as he overshadowed one of his senior disciples, a very advanced initiate, Muhammad. A close study of all the above will indicate to you the lines along which I would like to see the work expand in future years. I would ask for careful study of these words, for I regard this as an important instruction and one which could be regarded as the skeleton outline of the work I wish to see done. It will involve an intensification of the work of the advanced section in the arcane school, a greater emphasis upon full moon meetings, a careful organization of the triangle work and the goodwill work as an added effort to aid the work of the new group of world servers, plus an attempt to recognize the members of the new group whenever and wherever contacted. This will not be at all an easy task, my brothers, if you look only for those who think and work your way, or who recognize the hierarchy as you recognize it, or if you exclude those who labor in relation to religious and other fields in a manner different to yours. Forget not, as an instance of this, that the great labor movement in the world was initiated by one of the masters and is implemented from his ashram at this time. We come now to a detailed analysis of Rule 13. In the foregoing pages, I gave you certain broad principles and outlined a new aspect of the work which I had undertaken to do for humanity under instruction from the hierarchy. The teaching I gave there is very abstruse. Little of it can as yet be of real service to the majority of aspirants, but a wide and general idea can take form and provide the immovable background for later teaching. I would have you remember that the teaching which I have given out has been intermediate in nature, just as that given by HPB under my instruction was preparatory. The teaching planned by the hierarchy to proceed and condition the New Age, the Aquarian Age, falls into three categories. 1. Preparatory, given 1875 to 1890, written down by HPB. 2. Intermediate, given 1919 to 1945, written down by AAB. And 3. Revelatory, emerging after 1975, to be given on a worldwide scale via the radio. And then in the next century and early in the century, an initiate will appear and will carry on this teaching. It will be under the same impression, for my task is not yet completed, and this series of bridging treatises between the material knowledge of man and the science of the initiates has still another phase to run. The remainder of this century, as I told you elsewhere, in Destiny of the Nations, page 106, must be dedicated to rebuilding the shrine of man's living, to reconstructing the form of humanity's life, to reconstituting the new civilization upon the foundations of the old, and to the organizing of the structures of world thought, world politics, plus the redistribution of the world's resources in conformity to divine purpose. Then and only then will it be possible to carry the revelation further. It is with the above indicated sequence in mind that I come to the analysis of the sentences in Rule 13, beginning with the first. 1. Let the group get ready to reveal the hidden mystery. The readiness here referred to has nothing to do with personal preparedness or with the group unity which I have so often emphasized. It does not refer to individual purity or consecration or to mental development or to group relationships as they work out in harmony and understanding. I am considering something far different to all these factors which are regarded as automatic and necessarily present. I refer to that which is the result of all of them, just as they in their turn are the result of soul contact. I refer to effects wrought out in the group owing to the present and factual nature of the monadic control which is taking place increasingly. What does this mean? It signifies the fact that the members of the group are each and all of them upon the path of initiation at some one or other of its stages, and that the group as a group is in process of taking initiation, for initiation is a process at this stage and not an event. It signifies that the group Antakarana is built and is being consciously used and that therefore divine purpose is being sensed, even if only faintly so, and that the plan is being obeyed and carried out. It signifies also that the three strands of the rainbow bridge are now so strongly and firmly anchored that they not only connect the two aspects of the mental equipment, higher and lower mind, but that they have been carried also through the three levels of the triadal consciousness. It means also that these three strands are firmly anchored in what I have symbolically called the council chamber at Shambhala. This council chamber is not a location or a place, but a state of consciousness within the all-enveloping life. These 3 points of anchorage within the sphere of the planetary consciousness, or, if you like it better, though remembering ever that we are speaking and thinking in terms of symbols, in the planetary brain, find their feeble correspondence in the 3 points of sensitivity in the head of a disciple or initiate, that is, in the region of the pineal gland, the pituitary body, and the carotid gland. These, as you know, are to be found within the areas to which we give the names the head center, the ajna center, and the alta major center. These correspondences are very real, even though functioning upon a minute scale. The initiate achieves his desired perfecting when the triad within his head is related and love, will, and intelligence are functioning in synthesis. Here we find a relation to the spiritual triad and the 3 points in the council chamber, which are presided over by the 3 Buddhas of activity, and within whose exalted consciousness the 3 strands of the Antakarana meet and become active in a way incomprehensible to you. Necessarily, this great Antakarana is not constructed correctly except by those whose individual Antakaranas are likewise in process of construction. See you, therefore, the necessity of eventually organizing a group in the world which will be so constituted and so carefully chosen and interiorly related that all its members are initiates, all have created their own rainbow bridges with understanding and accuracy, and all can now work in such complete unity that the group Antakarana becomes a channel of unimpeded communication directly from Shambhala to the group, because every member of the group is a member of the hierarchy. In this manner, the 3 planetary centers arrive at the needed relationship, and another great triangle reaches true functioning activity. When this takes place, a revelation undreamt of will be manifested upon the earth. A new divine quality, of which no knowledge at present exists, will make its presence felt in the work of the Buddha and of the Christ, and the work of the coming avatar will be superseded by one for whom both Shambhala and the hierarchy have unitedly waited, and of whom the doctrine of the Messiah and the doctrine of avatars have been and are today only the dim distant symbols. They preserve this concept of the great revelation in the consciousness of men and the expectancy which the hierarchy evidences, and through the preparatory work now being undertaken at Shambhala. The group, therefore, to whom I address this instruction is not the group or groups who will first receive these papers. The instruction is intended for a group which will come later, and which will prepare the way, as of which some of the more advanced aspirants can form part if they walk humbly with their God. This, my brother, is one of the most advanced injunctions in any of the world's scriptures, and is found in the Bible. It has no reference to humility as usually interpreted and understood. It signifies the ability to view all life with a sense of divine proportion, and from the angle of spiritual mathematics, and, paradoxically paradoxically as it may sound, with no sense of dualism. The usual meaning is not correct. It involves acceptance and comprehension of purpose, and this in such a manner that the consecrated personality, under control of the monad via the antikarana, and in cooperation with the one known God, walks the ways of earth as a channel for the three divine qualities, love, will, and intelligence, but also as a channel for that which these three qualities will enable him later to sense, know, and reveal. These are solemn and important statements. They have within them the element of prophecy, but it is prophecy which has no relation to the salvation of humanity in any sense at all. It is related to an active appearance which will, under the law of synthesis, indicate that, with a capital T, which the great planetary centers of divine life are unitedly intended to reveal. Something lies behind the three divine aspects of so great an importance, beauty, and revelatory strength that all the happenings of all time, up to the present emerging Aquarian age, have been only the initial and the initiatory preparation. In this rule we find posed 2 preparatory steps and 4 major undertakings or demonstrations of fitness, if you like so to call them, for the work to be done. These later correspond to the 4 things the disciple must learn and comprehend before he can be shown the inmost mystery. As it is said in the rule for applicants, there is a definite relation between the 2 sets of rules, and it is one in which we shall note as we proceed. The 2 preparatory injunctions simply summarize the effects in the life of the disciple who has applied and learned the significance of the rules for applicants. But they are this time demonstrated by a group of disciples who have passed through certain initiations and are functioning as a unified group. The simplicity of the subject is great, and yet it is ever deemed to be complex. The applicant has become soul conscious and is therefore an initiate. Remember always that the soul on its own plane is an initiate of all degrees. Initiation is, in the last analysis, the realization, the recognition in the brain consciousness of various spheres and states of divine awareness, with a consequent life demonstration of this fact, this eternal fact. Because of this, the man thinks only in group terms and does this automatically and without any consciousness that he is doing. He expresses this group integrity simply as a part of his nature, just as in the personality stage and during the elapsing aeons since individualization, he has thought only and naturally in terms of the separated self. As long as a person makes a conscious effort to be group conscious and has to train and discipline himself to work in group formation, and as part of a group, he is still centered in the personality. This personality expression may be of an exceedingly high order, and the aspirant or disciple may be the highest kind of selfless person, but true group living is as yet not present. The transition stage is most difficult and oft bewildering. It presents its own problems based upon a newly presented phase of dualistic consciousness. The disciple reacts to group conditions and group problems. He tunes in with facility on the consciousness of those in the group. He is aware of group reactions and aspirations, but he is still himself. He is still passing through a stage of inner adjustment to a state of being and of awareness for which all past relationships have provided no guiding precedent. The group and the group personnel, which are capable of adjustment and which can carry out and conform to Rule 13 for disciples and initiates, have become so merged with the soul, within themselves and within all other selves, that the situation is reversed. It would now be an effort for such people to think and react as personalities. I word the problem thus so as to clarify it for you if possible. When this stage of centralization is achieved, then the group can begin to reveal the hidden mystery. All that I can tell you about that mystery is that it concerns the purpose and the reason for which our planetary logos took incarnation and became the informing life of our planet, the Earth. It concerns the necessity inherent in his own nature to reach a point upon the cosmic ladder of evolution, which would make him, as a result, the informing life of a sacred planet. Forget not that our planet is not yet a sacred planet, though it is close to that great transformation. The cosmic secret of this transforming process is one that Sunakumara is now learning, and when that which overshadows him during this incarnation has wrought the needed changes through a process of transformation and transmutation, then a great transfiguration will take place, and he will take his place among those empowered to work through a sacred planet. This process is that which implements the evolutionary process. Evolution is an effect of this hidden work, emanating from cosmic levels. Only when evolution has run its course through all the multiplicity of forms, of cycles, chains and spheres, of rounds and races, and of world periods, will we know something of the true nature of the hidden mystery. In the council chamber of Shambhala, it is being dimly sensed. The Buddha and the Christ are expressing the qualities which, when more universally demonstrated, will indicate its nature, if I might so express it. They are together mobilizing the equipment upon our planet, which will make the revelation of the mystery inevitable. This should give you a hint and much food for thought. More I cannot say, and even this you will only vaguely understand. Let us pass now to the second of the preparatory steps. 2. Let the group demonstrate the higher meaning of the lessons learned, and these are 4 and yet are 1. Aspirants learn, as they proceed upon the path of probation, to see the meaning of their physical plane activities in terms of the world of desire of the astral. What they do originates upon that plane and gives their deeds meaning. This is the ABC of elementary occultism and of true psychology. Later they enter a higher world of meaning and find that, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, or so is he. Thus the lesson of common monastic impulse is slowly mastered, and desire, in the process of learning desire, prompted by the mind and implemented by the personality, loses its hold upon the aspirant. Later again, as the soul begins to dominate, he learns the meaning of love, and slowly, and oft through the mastering of pain, he absorbs the significance or meaning of group activity, group relation, and group initiation. He stands, therefore, at this stage ready, as this rule expresses it, to learn the higher meaning of 4 lessons, processes, or stages which are in themselves nevertheless one lesson. The 4 lessons which he has learned up to this point have prepared him for the 4 lessons which, as an initiate and as one whose consciousness is focused in the spiritual triad, he must now master. To summarize, they constitute the 4 phases of an activity which will bring him to a point of tension which will indicate the next possible initiatory stage. 4 words could be used to express these processes: radiation, magnetization, transmutation, impartation. Let me briefly indicate some of the elementary significances of these words to the initiate consciousness. 1. Radiation. The initiate is a radiating center of light and love. This radiation has 2 effects. A, it has made him an essential and vital factor for unity in the Master's ashram. B, it has enabled him to gather around him his own group and thus begin to form his own ashram. The personnel of the world group, which will reveal the hidden mystery, will all of them be radiant centers to a greater or lesser degree. They will thus be invocative and evocative. This thought holds the clue to the law of synthesis, of unity, and of fusion as given in Rule 13 for initiates. 2. Magnetization. The initiate who is radiating light and love is himself being magnetized by the highest of the present known divine aspects, life. This expresses itself through will and purpose and is therefore dynamic in nature. The initiate is charged constantly with life and consequently can work with the impelling law of evolution, which, as worded in the rule we are considering, will carry the group together towards the higher three. See you not how the different phases of the teaching lead from one to another and provide a great ladder of approach to reality? I would call to your attention that in the 14 rules for applicants and in the 14 rules for disciples and initiates, you have the two great foundational courses of the coming schools of the mysteries for which I have prepared the world in Letters on Occult Meditation. 3. Transmutation. This indicates here an achievement and not a process. The work of transmuting the lower nature into the higher, and desire into love, of transforming personality purpose into group livingness and being, has led to that complete transfiguration which makes the entire process of transmutation no longer needed. But, and this is the point to be emphasized, because of this achievement, the art of transmutation is now the instrument which the initiate can use and transmute that which is not himself, and thus consciously and with clear purpose further the ends of evolution. Transmutation disappears out of his own life, but the forces which have been transmuted into spiritual energy begin now to have a dynamic transmutive effect in the world of forms, wherein he now chooses to work and serve according to his ray and ashramic intent. 4. Impartation. Reference to this is made in the book of Revelation, found in the New Testament. There we are told that the initiate is given a white stone, and in the stone a new name is found written. This is the hidden name egoic. I am at a loss at this point as to how to express the higher significance of this. This impartation marks a climaxing point in the attainment of the point of tension where the sound can be heard and not the word alone. Never forget that the Om, O-M, is simply a symbolically sounded word which is intended to bring into the minds of those upon the path those two great points of tension wherein A, the hidden name egoic, is conferred upon the disciple. This, as far as he is concerned, is the word of his soul ray, and B, the sound heard, of which the Om is a symbol. This is the first letter of the sevenfold name of the planetary logos. More upon this subject may not be given, nor am I in a position to give it. These two preparatory injunctions will give you some idea of how abstruse is the teaching conveyed in the rules for initiates. The understanding and the expressing of the 4 rules for applicants, as demonstrated by the disciples now functioning in a group, can all be summed up in the word being. Having said that, what does it mean to you? Being, per se, can only be grasped by those who have come alive monadically, who function in the 3 worlds of the spiritual triad with even greater positivity than the highly advanced personality functions in the 3 worlds of human evolution, and who have grasped somewhat the purpose for which Sunat Kumara has come into being, and through directed livingness is working out his intention. We can now take up the 4 major injunctions given to the initiated disciple as he prepares to work under the laws of the Spirit as a conscious soul and, for purposes of service, through a personality. There are many initiates working without a body of contact which a personality provides, but we shall not consider them in our studies. We shall only deal with those disciples who can work as a group on the physical plane, fulfilling ashramic intent on the one hand and preparing themselves to tread the way of the higher evolution upon the other. The first major injunction in this Rule 13 reads as follows. 3. Let the group understand the law of synthesis, of unity, and fusion. The law of synthesis, as you know, is the law of spiritual existence, and one of the 3 major laws of our solar system, as well as of our planet. It is a basic cosmic law applied from sources of which we know nothing, as are the laws of attraction and of economy. I dealt with these somewhat at length in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, and of these 2 other laws I have given much and hinted more. Of the laws of synthesis I can tell you but little. It is the law governing the activities of the spiritual triad and the conditioning law of monadic living. It works neither through the use of the energy of love nor through the application of the principle of economy. The fulfillment of these laws is necessary and preparatory to an understanding of the law of synthesis, and under the law of synthesis, the worlds of illusion and glamour are mastered, and the control of Maya is negated. Under the law of attraction, the nature of love is revealed, first of all through desire for form life, and then through attraction to the soul, and a consequent resolution of the dualities of soul and personality. This brings about a unity which in due time serves to reveal a greater potential dualism, that of soul and spirit. This fundamental duality must also be resolved, leaving the essential universal planetary duality, spirit-matter, present in time and space. The law of synthesis has reference to this relationship and to the factual nature of the tremendous assertion of H.P. Blavatsky that matter is spirit at its lowest point of manifestation and spirit is matter at its highest. It is of this synthesis that the group must learn. It is this relation which they must begin to comprehend, and the distinction, for there is a distinction, between synthesis, unity, and fusion must in due time be mastered. To you it may seem that these 3 words connote the same thing, but that is not so. Fusion is ever related to the conscious merging of soul and substance until a point of equilibrium is reached. At this point, unity becomes possible, and the point of balance, through the attainment of a point of tension, is disturbed. This takes place in 3 definitely defined stages when the fusion of personality and soul is brought about through the self-initiated effort of the disciple. First of all upon the probationary path, then upon the path of discipleship, and finally at the 3rd initiation, upon the path of initiation. It is essential that you ever remember that this 3rd initiation, the Transfiguration, is the first major initiation from the standpoint of the hierarchy, though the 3rd from the limited vision of the aspirant. The initiate then goes on to learn the significance of unity in its true sense. This is only possible when monadic influence can be consciously registered and when the antakarana is in process of conscious construction. I emphasize the word conscious here. Much of the work of fusion and of attainment proceeds unconsciously under the fundamental law of evolution, which is a shambolic law, embodying as it does the working out of the inscrutable will of deity. The work now being done on the 3 stages of the path has to be intentional and therefore consciously undertaken and intelligently planned. It must be backed, first of all, by determination, then by the spiritual will, and finally as an implemented aspect of purpose. Fusion might therefore be regarded as the individual process of spiritual integration, relating in full waking consciousness the three divine aspects in man. Unity might be regarded as the conscious adaptation of the initiated disciple to the greater whole as his absorption into the group through his obedience to the laws of the soul, and as governing his attitude to that in which he lives and moves and has his being. This goes on until he sees no distinction, registers no differences, and is aware of no separative reaction. And of all this, because the instinct to separation no longer exists in him, it refers to his oneness in the world of energies in which he moves, making him an unimpeded channel for energy and therefore an integral and smoothly working part of his total environment and, above all, of the group to which automatically and under the laws which govern his soul he has been attracted. He has learnt all that he can learn through the process of differentiation to which he has been subjected for aeons. The principle of intelligence controls him, and the principle of love motivates him, and he has consequently attained unity. But my brothers, it is the unity of his ray, of his ashram, and of the plan. It is the unity of the hierarchy which exists for purposes of service and active work in its 7 major groups and its 3 main departments or divisions. It is indeed attainment and liberation, but more must still be learnt if the way of the higher evolution is to be trodden, and a choice between the 7 cosmic paths made, a choice which curiously enough is not dependent upon ray, for all rays are to be found on all these paths. This can only be done through synthesis. This law of synthesis works through the 7 which yet are one, which points to the 7 ways, and yet those upon the 7 ways are one, which initiates the universal into the many but preserves its integrity, which originates the plan but preserves intact the purpose, which sees the multiplicity needed under the law of sacrifice but subordinates that law unto the law of synthesis, which breathes forth the many breaths and yet is life itself. In this attempt to paraphrase an ancient definition of the law of synthesis, I have said all that I can upon the theme. Only as disciples build the antikarana and function as the spiritual triad within the monadic life will inspiration come. Just as they learnt to make contact with the soul and to function as the threefold personality within the soul, and then revelation ensued. Naught is gained by further elucidation. Proceed with the work of building the antikarana, and light will shine upon your way, and revelation will attend your steps. The second major injunction, though the 4th phrase in our rule, is 4. Let the threefold mode of working with that which is dynamic carry the group together towards the higher 3. This injunction holds in it information which is somewhat new to the modern initiate, functioning in a physical body. It is difficult for him to grasp even a modicum of its significance. To convey any faintest hint of its meaning is incomparably difficult for me where disciples such as you are concerned. All I can do is to fall back upon the law of analogy, by means of which the microcosm can arrive at a glimmer of understanding of the more obvious aspects of the macrocosm. First, let me make reference to the words the higher 3. Let me see if I cannot somewhat clarify the entire complex idea. The words higher 3 refers to the Buddhas of activity who still remain actively cooperating with the Lord of the world. They are, as you have been told, close to Sanat Kumara and came with him when he decided to take incarnation through the medium of our planet Earth. It is difficult to understand their mysterious and peculiar functions. They do not belong to the solar system at all. They have passed through the human stage in such far distant and remote world cycles that the experience is no longer a part of their consciousness. They act as advisors to Sanat Kumara where his initial purpose is concerned, and that is why the words, "the will of God holds sway," occur in this rule. It is their supreme task to see that, in the council chamber of Shambhala, that purpose is ever held steadily within the area of preparation. I know not how else to word it. Of that council, they function in a peculiar sense as linking intermediaries between the logos of our solar system and the informing life of the constellation Libra. They relate these two centers of energy to our planetary logos. In the last solar system, they were the planetary logoi of the three planets in which the mind principle reached its highest stage of development. They embody in themselves in a most peculiar manner the wisdom aspect of the second ray, as it expresses itself primarily through what has been called in the Bhagavad Gita skill in action, hence their name, the Buddhas of activity. Sanat Kumara has now moved one step ahead of them upon the great cosmic ladder of evolution, for an aspect of the law of sacrifice has conditioned them. However, within the planetary consciousness and among those who work out the divine purposes, there are none who approach the eternal youth and these three Buddhas in point of evolution. They work out their plans, these four great lives, through the medium of the Lords of the Seven Rays. Under the law of analogy, they are to Sanat Kumara what the three mind aspects upon the mental plane are to the disciple and the initiate. They represent, in action, the concrete or lower mind of the planetary logos, that energy which we call the soul and which the disciple calls the son of mind, and the higher or abstract mind. But all this from cosmic levels and with cosmic implications. It was their activity which, after evolution had run a long course, brought about the act of individualization and thus brought the human kingdom into existence. In a mysterious sense, therefore, it might be said that the three Buddhas of activity are responsible for 1. The act of individualization, the work of the particular Buddha responsible at the time for this major activity has been temporarily quiescent since Lemurian days. He works, when active, through the seventh ray and draws the needed energy from two constellations, Cancer and Gemini. Then 2, the act of initiation. I would call your attention to the word act. I am not here referring to process. His work only begins at the third initiation, when the planetary logos is the initiator. At that initiation, the will aspect begins to function. The Buddha behind the initiatory process is extremely active at this time. He works through the Christ and the Lord of the second ray, drawing the needed energy from the constellation Capricorn and Aquarius. 3, the act of identification. This involves what has been called a moment of opening up, during which the initiate sees that which lies within the cosmic intent and begins to function not only as a planetary unit, but as a cosmic focal point. The Buddha of activity, responsible for this type of planetary activity, works with the Lord of the first ray and functions as an outpost of the consciousness of that informing life of Aries and of Leo. His work is only now beginning to assume importance. I realize that this information is little meaning to you and lies beyond your understanding, but so was much that I gave you in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Its sole value for you lies in the revelation of the linking up and the interplay between all parts of our solar system, our universe, and the zodiac. Through these three great Buddhas, there is a basic relation established aeons ago and steadfastly held between our planet, 3 of the 7 sacred planets, and 6 of the major constellations, the 3 and the 6, which most uniquely concern the 4th kingdom in nature. Other planets and other constellations are also related to the human family, but their relation is more aggressively, if I might use that word, related to the 3 subhuman kingdoms. With these we shall not here deal. Their relation to the human kingdom has been covered by me in the astrological section of this treatise, A Treatise on the 7 Rays, Volume 3, Esoteric Astrology. You will note that I have here indicated the existence of 5 triangles. One, that existing in the interplay of the energies of the 3 Buddhas of activity who create a triangle closely related to the planet Saturn. 2, the triangle of the 3 rays through whom the 3 Buddhas work. 3, the 3 planets which are connected with the 3 lords of the 3 rays and by means of which they express their impelling energy. And 4 and 5, 2 interlaced triangles created by the 6 constellations from which the 3 Buddhas of activity draw their needed energy and to which they are uniquely related through their individual karma. These 2 interlaced triangles are the cause of the 6-pointed star, so familiar among the many occult symbols. From the law of analogy, another exceedingly important triangle is found in the human body and esoterically considered as related to the subject under consideration. 1, the ajna center, embodying the directing energy of that body of activity, which we call the personality. 2, the throat center, which is peculiarly active today in all human beings. This testifies to the success of the creative work of the Buddhas of activity. This, in its turn, has a small symbolic triangle of its own, to which I would call attention the thyroid gland and the parathyroids. 3, the center at the base of the spine. This is galvanized into activity at a certain stage of the evolutionary process by energy emanating from the Buddhas of activity who are the least active at this particular time. It is an energy pouring towards the 4th kingdom, but not directed towards any individual. These great lives work through major groups. Their potency is such that it would otherwise prove destructive. The purpose of deity is necessarily embodied in a mental proposition. It is through this mental proposition that the 3 Buddhas of activity implement their work. I can put it no clearer. There will come a time in the experience of all initiates when, each for himself, a formulation of this mental proposition will be absolutely necessary. By means of this, each initiate will embody his individual understanding of the divine purpose as the plan has been revealed to him. This he can do only through the means of group experience, in cooperation with his group, and when the group as a whole has reached a similar point of realization, has together touched the fringes of this highest of all revelations for humanity. When for the first time they succeed in doing this, they will come as a group under the direct emanation of the higher 3 and under an aspect of the council chamber at Shambhala, which has been hitherto unknown and unrealized. This will connote a working out into the consciousness of the group members of an event which has taken place within the ashram of Sunat Kumara, the hierarchy itself. This takes place through the stimulation of all the ashrams at a certain full moon and concerns the relation of the ashrams as a whole to Shambhala and not to humanity. Can you grasp something of what I am endeavoring to somewhat unsuccessfully to convey? There is an ashramic activity of which disciples know nothing in their brain consciousness until such time as the 3rd initiation has been taken, and the results of it are then dimly but increasingly sensed. It is related to the interplay between Shambhala and the hierarchy, but not between the hierarchy and humanity. It concerns the purpose and the plan, as the latter is the instrument of the former. The event of realization takes place via the triad formed by a master and his two senior disciples, or it is formed by three masters, all upon the same ray, as for instance the master KH and his ashram, myself and my ashram, and another affiliated ashram. It is for this reason that in all exoteric groups connected with an ashram, there is always a group leader and two others who are the reflection or the correspondence to the higher triad. This is part of the externalization of the hierarchy, which is proceeding rapidly at this time. The importance of understanding the function of triangles is a prime necessity. A hint lies here for students in the political realm, where every country, under differing names, has its chosen ruler and its ministers responsible for home affairs or interior relations, and its foreign secretary responsible for exoteric relationships. One further point, and that the Buddhas of activity might here be of interest, each of them has a special relation to the three races which have been or are strictly human. These are the third, fourth, and fifth root races, which we call the Lemurian, the Atlantean, and the present Aryan race. I do not use the word Aryan in the manner of the German race. In some peculiar manner, they represent in Shambhala the soul of each of these three races. One thing complicates this question for you, but it is in reality quite simple. The same souls reincarnate in each race, and each soul therefore comes in turn under the influence of each of the three Buddhas, each of whom is of a quality different to that of his two associates. They represent, in their lowest aspects, the three aspects of the mind. As I earlier said, there is, one, the instinctual nature as it develops into the mind nature and makes a transition into an automatic subconscious character, and at the same time assumes some of its paralleling higher qualities. Two, the lower concrete mind in its more developed stage, as it gradually assumes control and supersedes instinct in the consciousness of man. The Buddhas of activity preside over what might be called, using a technical occult term, the ahamkara principle, the mind as it serves the selfish interests of man and enables man thereby to achieve a sense of proportion and a finer estimate of values. Forget not that selfishness is a stage of unfoldment, and that it is a necessary stage whereby humanity learns the price of self-interest. 3. The personality mind. This assumes control over the man and leads him to prove the nature of power and of success, and above all else of integration. This too is a necessary phase and precedes a stage of awakening. These three great lives, who have associated themselves with the Lord of the world, might be regarded as constituting aspects of his personality, though this is not technically so. The name Sanat Kumara is not his true name. It is only the first letter of that name, which is known only to the masters, whilst the second letter is known only to the Chohans. The first syllable of his name is known in the council chamber at Shambhala, but the rest of his name remains unknown as yet. The three Buddhas of activity are, to the planetary logos, to give you another definition, what the spiritual triad is to the dedicated personality of the initiated disciple. For such is the spiritual status of the planetary logos. The one of the three Buddhas now coming into activity is the one who works through the spiritual will. Within the body of the planetary logos, humanity is slowly building that which they call the Antikarana. This is, in reality, the linking thread between the head center of Sanat Kumara and his heart center. Ponder on these words. There is a mystery involved here, and it is little that I can do to make it clear. As humanity builds or creates the triangles of light and of goodwill, they are in reality invoking a response activity from two of the Buddhas of activity. The one who works through the medium of the will aspect, and the one who works through love and humanity, intelligently applied. Forget not that these three great Buddhas summarize in a peculiar sense the transmuted essence of the previous solar system, in which intelligent activity was the goal. Today, that essence underlies all the activity of the solar system, but is motivated by love, which was not the case in the earlier manifestation. The Buddhas themselves form a deeply esoteric triangle. The two types of triangles now being created by a mere handful of people are related to that basic triangle. A third type of triangle will at some much later date be constructed, but only when these two earlier types are well established in the consciousness of humanity. Then the activity of all three Buddhas will be involved and present, and a major planetary integration will take place. This is symbolized in man when the three centers in the head, the Ajna, the Brahmarandra center, and the Alta Major center, are all functioning and unshakably related, thereby constituting a triangle of light within the head. From the triangles now being created and those later to be assembled, the Buddhas of activity will extract that essential quality, at present very rarely to be found, which will go to the building of this aspect of the planetary Antikarana. The triangles of light and of goodwill are essentially invocative. They constitute the ABC of the coming science of invocation. Their strength is dependent upon the depth of feeling in the one case and the strength of the will in the other, with which they are created. I have here given those disciples who are launching this new project, which is so close to my heart, a new and useful hint. This work must go on. It is because the entire concept is so new and different to anything hitherto projected that it seems so impossible of achievement. The Triangles project has its incentive in such highly esoteric sources that some disciples regard the work as exceedingly difficult and thus complicate, by their thinking, its essential simplicity. Others regard it as the simplest thing in the world, and by an emphasis upon the exoteric and the organizational angle, they again hinder the true type of triangle being created. Disciples need to be aware of the true proposed plan and find ways to make clear the middle position between the difficulties brought forward and the simplicities which distort. Perhaps I may help to clarify somewhat the minds responsible for the initial steps in this deeply esoteric enterprise. It is different to the intellectual and practical work which men and women of goodwill are asked to do and will do. It is not what some earnest people regard as goodwill work or a phase of the goodwill work. The forming of triangles and of light and of goodwill concerns the reservoir of energy upon the inner and etheric side of life, which will automatically and with full circulatory effect enable the exoteric work of the men and women of goodwill to make progress. It is not goodwill per se, but the creation of triangles of energy within the etheric body of the planet, which are deliberately qualified by goodwill. The two phases of the work are necessarily complementary to each other, but must not be regarded as one. The triangles of light must be qualified by or become the agents of goodwill, and the two groups are closely interrelated. The men and women of goodwill need know nothing of these triangles unless it is deemed wise, and they are individually advanced enough to react correctly. but their work along the lines of goodwill will be successful or non-successful, I speak from the long-range view, according to the intensity of purpose and the depth of love demonstrated by the two groups of triangle members. Those responsible for the creative work upon the outer field must begin with the esoteric work. I am writing here for disciples, some of whom are members of my ashram, and for the new group of world servers. These are responsible for carrying forward the work as planned. The two groups of triangles already formed are in reality building a thought form anent this work which will evoke response from the true builders. It will be apparent to you, therefore, that this creative work, with its intelligent and practical purposes, and its ability, when rightly functioning, to unite the exoteric and the esoteric workers in one spiritual undertaking, originates in reality in Shambhala itself, and was grasped as to intent and purpose by masters upon the first and second rays, though primarily the second ray disciple and master understood it the most easily. Later, when steady and systemic work has been done, and the idea is familiar to the public, this activity will form an important part of the New World religion and be better understood. It will have its own inner group who will work entirely subjectively, building the triangles of light and of goodwill, and then will work objectively, directing the activities of those who are building the organizational aspect of triangles of practical goodwill on earth with an effective subsidiary activity. That time is not yet. Today we have the creation of a general thought form, or the germinating of the seed of an idea. Later, when the true outer work begins, its potency will be objectively demonstrated, because the Buddhas of activity will gradually become aware of the existence of the thought form in its nature of light and its quality of goodwill. They will then pour of their life into it as need arises and emergency decrees. Then gradually the will of God will hold sway, as our injunction expresses it. Paralleling all this will be the work of the men and women of goodwill throughout the world, but in itself entirely objective, worldwide, and amazingly useful. Disciples need to learn to think in terms of group synthesis. This implies the achieving by them of deepened subjective relationships and increased sensitivity to the higher impression and the inner inspiration. The vertical life of the spirit and the horizontal life of relationship must be expressed simultaneously in some measure before the significance of these rules can be somewhat grasped. We have been considering Shambhala, and I have given you some information hitherto not communicated in words regarding the council chamber of Sanat Kumara and of those who constitute its membership. I would pause here to remind you of two facts. One, Shambhala is a state of consciousness or a phase of sensitive awareness wherein there is acute and dynamic response to divine purpose, a response made possible by the synthesis of purpose and of spiritual relationship which exists between those who are associated with Sanat Kumara. And two, brotherhood, as it essentially is, constitutes a major mystery. Also, it is one which is only in process of solving, and that only on the two higher levels of the cosmic physical plane, those levels which we call the logoic and the monadic. I am aware that you understand brotherhood in terms of the one father and his children. That understanding is in itself so limited and inaccurate that it serves mainly to distort the truth, yet all that you can grasp at this time is embodied in this concept. The nearest description of the true relationship might be said to be as follows. Brotherhood is an expression of the relation which the planetary logos on the cosmic mental plane bears to his personality as it expresses itself through the planet with all its forms of life upon the cosmic physical plane. This relationship is focused through Sanat Kumara, who is the individualized mind of that great life. Wording it otherwise, the planetary logos on his own plane is to Sanat Kumara what the soul is to the human personality upon the physical plane in the three worlds. The sum total of the relationships set up is therefore inadequately covered by the word brotherhood. Fellowship, so frequently used to express a similar idea, is in reality the mode whereby a dimly sensed brotherhood seeks to make its presence felt. The words, the fellowship of Christ, indicate the emergence of this concept subjectively upon the mental plane. This will be followed as time elapses by concrete manifestation upon the physical plane. It is this idea which lies behind the glibly used words idea, ideal, and idol, and which is also responsible for the growing sense of responsibility which characterizes all human advancement upon the way of life. It is the basic idea which governs the council chamber at Shambhala and which constitutes the motivating impulse behind the planetary expression of livingness. It is this also which characterizes the ideal for which the hierarchy stands and which implements the plan. It is this spiritual planning which results in the growing forms of relationship which today seem to be taking definite shape in the concretizing of the divine project, right human relations. I have written these opening remarks because it is this elevated understanding of brotherhood which conditions divine purpose and which leads to the spiritual planning that will give you the due to the third major injunction. With this we shall now deal. This injunction is worded as follows. 5. Let transfiguration follow transformation, and may transmutation disappear. I would here remind you that in these 14 rules we must approach our theme from the angle of the initiate consciousness and not from that of the blended soul personality consciousness. It is the higher approach which is here indicated, the problem of the initiate group and not that of the individual within the group. Hence the great difficulty in putting any of these teachings into words. To the average aspirant to accepted discipleship, the three words which distinguish this third major injunction, but which symbolically constitute the fifth injunction in the rule, might be defined as follows. The ideas conveyed are those of an aspirant to the mysteries as he faces initiation. Let us take these words in the order given in Rule 13. Transfiguration. That stage upon the path of initiation where the third initiation is undergone, wherein the personality is irradiated by the full light of the soul, and the three personality vehicles are completely transcended. They have become simply forms through which spiritual love may flow out into the world of men in the salvaging task of creation. 2. Transformation. The evolutionary process which is carried on upon the path of discipleship, in which the disciple transforms his lower threefold appearance or personality and begins to display divine quality. His physical body becomes obedient to the dictates of his mind, which is becoming responsive to the higher mind through the medium of the soul. His emotional nature becomes the receptacle of buddhi, or of the intuition. Then, after the third initiation, it disappears altogether, and the buddhic vehicle becomes the main instrument of sentiency. The mind, in due course, is equally transformed by impression from the higher mind as it endeavors to implement the will nature of the monad. And we have 3, transmutation. The method whereby that which is lower is absorbed by the higher, whereby force is transmuted into energy, whereby the energy of the 3 lower centers is carried up into the 3 higher centers, the head, heart, and throat, and which later enable the initiate to centralize all the energies in the 3 directing centers in the head. This transmuting process goes forward under the pressure of daily life experience, under the magnetic effect of soul contact, and as the inevitable result of evolution itself. All these three spiritualizing processes are well known, in theory at least, to all spiritual aspirants. They are expressions of soul personality, intention, and effective interplay. They also constitute a paralleling activity to the task of building the antikarana, as modes of alignment play a large part in the process of transmutation. It is not, however, with these attitudes, processes, and interpretations that the initiate is concerned, but with the significance of these processes in terms of the completed antikarana and from the point of view of the angle of intention of the monad. In other words, what do transfiguration and transformation signify to members of the hierarchy as they face the way of the higher evolution? What can these words imply to those for whom the soul, the mediating principle, no longer has any factual significance? Consider for a moment that the initiate who has undergone the first major initiation, the Transfiguration, and the two initiations of the threshold, the birth and the baptism of the Christian mysteries, has created the antikarana in order to establish direct relation between the monad and the personality, between the center of universal awareness or identification and the form expression in three worlds. The antikarana is constructed and constitutes an active channel of contact. The soul, which has for ages directed the various and varying personalities, is no longer in existence. The causal body has disappeared, shattered at the moment when the initiate at the fourth initiation cries out and says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" The Temple of Solomon, the spiritual temple not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, is no longer required. It has served its ancient purpose, and that which has been deemed eternal must disappear in the light of that, all capitals, that to which eternity is only a phase of that which shall later be revealed. All that now remains for the initiate are the 2 points of living purpose to which we give the names of spirit matter or life appearance. The lesson ahead of the initiate is to realize the inner meaning, not so obvious and easily grasped meaning, that spirit is matter at its highest point and matter is spirit at its lowest. This involves the free interplay of life energy consciously applied as the result of age-long processes, and matter force via the antikarana. The rainbow bridge becomes a channel for the impact of monadic or life energy upon substance, so that substance, taking form under the cyclic intention of the planetary logos, may become increasingly colored or qualified by the energy of universality. You can see from the above somewhat involved sentences how inadequate is language to express the understanding and the intention of the hierarchy. To the initiate, therefore, the two words transfiguration and transformation mean something quite different than they mean to a disciple, whilst transmutation is now meaningless to him, for there is nothing within him which requires transmuting. It might consequently be stated that 1. Transmutation concerns the expression of the life force upon the 3 lower planes of human living and evolution. 2. Transformation concerns, in a most peculiar manner, the 3 aspects of mind upon the mental plane: A, the lower mind; B, the son of mind or the soul; and C, the higher mind. 3. Transfiguration concerns the life of the spiritual triad upon its own 3 levels of identification. To this might be added the fact that 1. The 3 lower planes of transmutation are dense, liquid, and gaseous subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. The mental plane is a unique location or state of consciousness whereon or wherein the lower planes are subjected to impression from the three higher. The higher three and the lower three are subjected to a definitely esoteric and mysterious process, and it is on this plane that the work of transmutation is completed from the angle of the initiate. The three planes of the spiritual triad are the spheres whereon transformation goes forward. This transformation has not to do with the transforming of the personality, but is uniquely related to the interior work of the hierarchy and the effect of this living, developing intensity upon the members of the hierarchy. 5 planes are therefore involved in these 2 phases of the divine work. 4, the 2 highest planes, the monadic and the logoic, are the planes of transfiguration from the point of view of the higher initiate. By then, the process of transmutation have dropped below the threshold of consciousness, and though the initiate, working with forms in the 3 worlds, has his instrument upon the outer physical plane, his own work and hierarchical activity is strictly triadal and monadic, with a steadily growing responsiveness to logoic intent. Let us now consider the phases of transfiguration and transformation as far as it is possible in an exoteric instruction, and may transmutation disappear for all disciples as time elapses, and that with speed owing to the great need today for hierarchical workers. It might here be asked, what is the work undertaken by the masters themselves upon the 3 planes of the spiritual triad? Students are well aware that many of the masters are occupied with the evolutionary processes of the various kingdoms in nature in the 3 lower worlds. They forget that the majority are not so occupied. Have you ever wondered what it is that incites a master to stay working in the 3 worlds and with his mind focused upon its evolutionary processes? Have you ever considered what else it might be possible that intrigued and demanded his interest? The self-centered attitude of mankind is inclined to believe that human need, and incidentally the need of the other kingdoms in nature, are all that prompts the hierarchy to carry on its work of salvaging and stimulation. But that is only a partial estimate of the work which they are doing. In the process of carrying forward their work, the consciousness of the master is being steadily expanded, and this because of the nature of their work in the 3 worlds. It necessarily becomes more and more inclusive. That is the effect upon him as he works on behalf of humanity or on behalf of the other kingdoms in nature. There is a definite and evolutionary effect, but on the 3 higher levels of the spiritual triad, another type of evolutionary impulse is directing his activities. I have told you elsewhere that consciousness, as we understand it, is being transcended, and a new aspect of universal sentiency is taking its place. To this development, I have given the inadequate name of identification. This is a word which involves consciousness, which invokes the will, which is dynamic in nature, inclusive in contact, and which is also based upon the doctrine of non-separativeness. This, however, is only a beginning of an entirely new phase of development. Consciousness eventually drops below the level of perception. It becomes as automatic and unregistered in its expression as animal instinct is to the human being. It functions, but the man is not consciously aware of it. It is a protective mechanism. The will aspect of the monad supersedes but does not negate love, which has become in its turn instinctual. A one-pointed, rapier-like assumption of identification takes the place of the inclusiveness hitherto felt and practiced. Perhaps I can convey to you something of what I mean by pointing out that the circle with the point at the center is symbolic of the perfected man. He is rounded out. He is inclusive both vertically, soul contact, and horizontally, human relationship, yet he stands at the center of his consciousness and of its self-imposed ring-pass knot. From thence he never moves, but is aware all the time of all that proceeds within his sphere of influence. Here is the symbol of the master from a specific point of attainment. But the master himself is not static. His field of work is clear. His realm of contacts, human, subhuman, and superhuman, is also clear. Within the ring-pass knot and in the world of sentiency and in relation to the world of loving understanding, he stands the master. It is at this precise point in time and space that the work of transformation begins for the master. A transformation which is brought about by the unfoldment and development made possible upon the 3 levels of the spiritual triad. As this transformation takes place, a new activity supervenes which finally enables the master to break through the planetary ring-pass knot and thus arrive at the door of the higher evolution. What I have now to say may be made somewhat clearer by means of the following symbol. The master has now penetrated into another cosmic level, but he is still within the aura of the one life. Now the cosmic astral plane is revealed to him. He sees the reason why, first of all, sentiency had to be developed, why it had then to be used and mastered, and finally had to be completely negated in such a manner that it dropped below the level of consciousness. There is no longer glamour upon the cosmic astral plane, and only those who have dominated sentient reaction upon all levels of the cosmic physical plane and are completely free from it can then, through the illumined will and through the power of that mysterious quality, if I may so call a factual expression, of identification, direct the lowest aspect of cosmic desire upon the cosmic astral plane. This necessarily has to be tuned in with that to which they are irrevocably related. This identification is therefore the highest expression of divine purpose upon the cosmic physical plane, even whilst it is the lowest aspect of the cosmic astral desire. Therefore, my brothers, the transformation with which this rule deals is the transformation of consciousness into identification. More than that, I may not say. To express the true meaning, I have no words or symbols. In this line of approach, through identification, the master builds that of which the spiritual correspondence is the monastic antakarana. The antakarana, which is now emerging, is a projection from the ashram of a master. There are, therefore, 7 ways into the way of the higher evolution. These 7 ways correspond to the 7 ashrams. Upon the 7 rays, they are related also to the 7 initiations, to the 7 principles of man, and to all the other many septenates. It is the force of will generated by the master during the process of 1. Attaining the 5th initiation, 2. Working in the 3 worlds of creative salvaging, 3. Achieving astronomic purpose and consequent group activity, 4. Manifesting ray energy, and 5. Demonstrating a faculty which is known only to initiates which have passed beyond the 3rd initiation. This provides the focused intention which enables the master to attain what is called transformation and later to project the dynamic impulse of his spiritual will in such a manner that he succeeds in piercing the planetary ring-pass knot. He is then given the freedom of the world, and not just the freedom of the worlds. It will be obvious that I am dealing with the subject of the 6th initiation. When this initiation has been consummated, the Chohan then transcends the 3 worlds of the spiritual triad and is focused as a projecting agent of the lighted will as it expresses itself upon the monadic plane. This stage of unfoldment is in reality the ascension initiation, the true significance of which will be revealed through the medium of the coming world religion. There then follows, as a result of this, what is called the true transfiguration. This enables the initiate to function upon the logoic, or highest plane of the cosmic physical plane. This, in Christian phraseology, is called sitting down upon the right hand of God in heaven. There, the man who has attained this seventh initiation is transfigured. The first contact comes along the line which he has projected as a result of transformation. It is made with that which has ever overshadowed Sanat Kumara. The Chohan has now taken the seventh initiation. And 6, let the Om be heard right at the center of the group, proclaiming God is all. It is not my intention to interpret this final phrase of Rule 13. Its meaning lies beyond your most elevated comprehension. It concerns the transmutation of the Om into the originating sound, bringing certain basic transformation and resulting in a transfiguration which extends to the entire planet and has reference to a certain major planetary initiation. With these matters we are not concerned. With them, only a few of the more advanced masters are concerned. Therefore, we will wait until, through resolution, we have resolved our spiritual problems, transmuted our lower natures, and undergone the lower aspects of both transformations, and are consequently ready for the third initiation, that of the Transfiguration. Okay, we'll get to Rule 14 soon, and we'll finish off the rules and get into part 2. Okay, see ya.